Hey everyone, I'm Molly the Kush RN, your host of Conversations with Kush podcast, checking in day one of NECANN. I have an incredible guest lineup for you today, so stay tuned for all that content to come rolling out in the next couple of weeks. Sitting down with an incredible woman, an incredible kindred spirit. We have just been developing our relationship over the last couple months, and I'm so happy to be able to finally sit down with Miss Stella Morrison from CannaContent. So welcome, Stella.
Molly, I can't follow that. I can't follow that. Thank you so much for the kindness and for all the hospitality you've shown in Minnesota. I'm glad to be here in the spot, and literally my booth is directly across from yours.
I know.
So there's some good synergy going on here.
Right? Yeah, for sure. We're in good company, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about how you got here, how you came to cannabis.
Yeah, so I own an agency called CannaContent. We have been in the space since 2017. So we're going on year 9 of operating solely for cannabis businesses. So this is a very interesting venture for us. We came into this not really realizing that cannabis was a business. It's really part of our story, because when we kind of put the pieces together, I'm from New Jersey originally. New Jersey had a very limited medical program and had for a very long time. But I was always anti-criminalization, anti-prison, anti-incarceration for drug charges. I've always kind of I always kind of leaned with that politically, but didn't realize that cannabis was a business until kind of hit me in the face. So my business partner, Adam Ujalko, we met in the newsroom. So we were both reporters. He took on my beat when I left and transitioned out of the industry to start my first content marketing. So we come from we both come from the journalist world, and I transitioned out and I opened my first content marketing and SEO agency that's been going for about 11 years now, and Adam moved on at some point to a publication where he was covering the cannabis beat.
Awesome.
So strangers were reaching out to him and saying, "Hey, you write about cannabis real nice. Can you help me write about cannabis real nice?" So he called me and he's just like, "Well, I haven't freelanced before. How do you start doing this? What do you charge?" And at the end of the conversation, we're like, this is a business, right? So this is a business. So all the facts about, I've been, how long, aside from my own consumption, aside from, where I stood politically on a lot of these things, I didn't realize that cannabis was a business. So Adam then brought in Bree Brewer, who's now our co-founder and chief creative officer. And basically at that moment, I went to the Pacific Northwest. I actually won a flight. So first time I ever win a contest at anything, I won a Southwest round trip.
Nice.
And I used it to go to Portland in Seattle, and just to see adult use in action. This is summer 2017. I went to Seattle Hemp Fest, and I'm like, there's marketing companies here. There's an opportunity here. So I came back, kind of found what I, kind of brought back what I saw from those legal markets, and we had a brand very quickly. After 2 months later, we had our first client. So we've been kind of running at the races ever since. That's how I came back around. It's a combination of, it's amazing how many ways that people are brought to the plant. And it's very legitimate that business opportunity can be one of those components, but that can align with your values at the same time, right?
Yes,
so it's nice knowing that there are other folks who understand that, the impact on social justice, the impact on, on just, people, on people's freedoms. There's so many different angles that you can come at that with. But also, I get to work, play, and have fun at the same time. It's really an amazing, 9 years in, it's really been an amazing opportunity.
And working for Sacred Plant Medicine that you also access and the benefits of, right?
Exactly. And that's part of what we have to do. And something that we're very, at the core of what we do at CannaContent is education, right? We still deal with a lot of stigma. We deal with people who walk in and are overwhelmed and don't know what to do. Cannabis folk tend to talk to themselves, right? When we're in the industry, it's like, haha, indica sativa, we know that's whatever. And we kind of know what's going on. But the average person still has no idea when they see 40 strains on a menu, 100 strains on a menu, and they're just kind of go blank, right?
Yes, they do.
So where do you even start with that? And how does that become a part of your marketing? So we see that, and especially in some of the more restrictive states like Ohio, where I live and where we work out of, you're still dealing with people who kind of have the reefer madness, right? And that exists everywhere, but it's something that I think is still very real. It's something that the East Coast, emerging markets, which we specialize in, we're way ahead of, the West Coast is way ahead of us in that kind of conversation. So we have to find that energy and match people where they are.
Well, getting back to your journalism piece, I mean, storytelling is a beautiful way to bring forward those stories of like how cannabis has helped people's wellness and on their journeys towards being more healthy. And so, and that's how we touch the hearts and minds of our clinicians, our politicians, so that's where we can really penetrate by people telling, how this medicine has helped them.
There are fewer testimonies more powerful than hearing someone say, I can get back to playing with my kids again because I'm not in chronic pain. Or I have multiple sclerosis and this manages my symptoms and I can have a relatively normal pain level at a 2 or a 3 instead of a 9 day-to-day life. There is nothing that translates better than showing the impact that this plant has on people in any aspect. And I do believe that all consumption is medical in some way.
I do too.
And there's a lot of belief in that. I think that's very much the case, whether you know it or not. And when you see, and you can be, and it's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to acknowledge cannabis isn't for everyone. That's okay. Not every medication's ever for everyone. Not every substance is for everyone, right? So, but it's about, let's be honest about it. Let's not use it to fearmonger. Let's use it to educate and help people understand, well, is this a use that can help you advance, right? Can this help you? And to be able to be a part of telling those stories, especially with the founders and dispensary owners and brand developers that we work with who've seen their parents suffer and couldn't get access to medical. There's a lot of those stories out there, and it's just like, well, how do you? Now we're going to pass that on to the next generation of people, right?
Well, and for me, like cannabis, I didn't get my full buy-in until I found the product that worked for me, right? And so there's that piece of education, like you need to tap into like what's going to actually be beneficial to you, what's not going to make you feel uncomfortable. We want you to have a good experience when you have cannabis. So, just like finding your own lane in cannabis, and then not also having judgment against people in the ways that they're using it, whether they're dabbing every day to get up and get their day going, or like they're on day 3 of chemo and like that's the day that's really hard for them, versus like someone that's drinking THCA tea, getting all the medical benefits of cannabis, but not really having euphoria in that experience, I
actually just had this conversation within the last 24 hours with someone because I am a lightweight, low-dose girly.
Me too.
I always have been. I've never has changed for me. And, in a lot of places where you can only access 100 milligram drinks, that doesn't do anything for me, right? And having access to low dose has been is really where it's at for me. And then in the course of the conversation, I'm like, who wants that? And then I caught myself, right? Because 100 milligram, that's a dose for a patient, right?
Yes,
and it's just like, that is something that someone's going to need. I'm just like, I need to not knock this, right? Like, it's not right for me, but that doesn't mean it's not right for somebody else, right? Like that's pain management for people who have severe issues. Like that's pain management. And being cognizant and conscious of that is one of the key things that as marketers we can and should be doing as we start educating folks through the dispensaries we work with, through the brands that we're working with. When we're doing this, that's what we need to be focusing on.
100%. What do you find exciting about Minnesota's market?
I love watching new markets figure out how this is going to work for 2 reasons. First, we have a lot of experience being hands-on in new and emerging markets. We opened our dispensary, listen to me. We opened our agency.
Next on the docket.
Please, no. I see how hard these folks work, and I'm like, not for me.
I was like, I'm so glad I'm not plant touching. Like, that's a really nice lane to be in.
I say that once a week, I'm telling you. So we're actually in when we opened our agency, that was back when the governor of New Jersey at the time, he said we're going to have legal weed in our first 100 days. And I love to say 4 years later, we got our wish. So what did we see in those 4 years from 2017 to 2021? We saw people getting ready for a market. We saw people who wanted to apply for a license. We saw people who started advocating. I was in Trenton talking about bills and advocating for the first time because I knew this is how we were going to move everything forward. It was about understanding what does this mean for patients when adult use comes online, right? How are we protecting patients? And most importantly, how are we learning from the states that came before us?
Right.
So that really leads me to two major ways that I look at this. The first is we've seen markets build out adult use from the ground up in New Jersey and New York in particular. We watched the years of slow build and the transition of, well, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to get this experience, and then you leverage that to apply for a license or start meeting the people now who are going to be willing to fund me when the time comes, or the people who are going to help me brand and make a website when the time comes. We saw that in New Jersey, New York, and that was a years-long process because I'll tell you, I walk into rooms in New Jersey, New York, and I know who was there since 2017 because I've been there since 2017.
Right.
And that same energy I see in places like Minnesota.
Yeah.
So I love emerging markets for that reason because I see the excitement here. I see the community and the camaraderie that you're building and how beautiful that really is.
The commitment to and the dedication to like that slow grind.
The slow grind is something you're going to see everywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's at least most of the states I've worked in.
Yeah.
Slow grind is unfortunately what it is. But that leads to the second part of this is think of me as a fortune teller, right?
Yeah.
Think of me as Nostradamus coming in with my big white beard and being like, well, we've seen this all before, and you know what? History might not repeat itself, but it rhymes. So you're first getting off the ground. You're not thinking about how price compression is going to impact you, and you're not thinking about 5 years down the line. What happens when you have 4 folks, within 5 miles of you who are selling the same thing? What's your differentiating factor?
Right.
That's the work that happens now because businesses are built on concrete and not quicksand.
Sure.
And if you are not thinking in that way, you're going to collapse. So I want to see folks get built correctly, not get convinced that they need something that doesn't help them right away or something that they can start doing when they're post-revenue, right?
Yeah.
So these are the things that I'm thinking about and I'm talking about regularly when I am meeting with people in Minnesota and other emerging markets like Virginia and Ohio and like all these places that are starting to come online. How can I be a part? What can I take from what I've seen in other similar states and how can I show you? Well, again, this is rhymed. That's rhymed, and let's be poets, right? Let's do this.
The foundational build is so crucial. It's so crucial, yeah.
And
because you need something stable that you can launch off of. And you really need to know who you are, as a brand and what you want to project and who you want to serve, right? So let's pivot a little bit and just talk about what you do in your company.
So our agency specializes in 5-6 core areas. So brand identity development, search engine optimization is what we are most known for. Content marketing, which is applies to really all the services we offer. Web design and development, social media management, and as of about a month ago, actually about April 2026, as of then, loyalty marketing is the newest addition to our roster.
Love it.
So that's all, and then advisory and consultation. So we're working with folks who need that kind of third person to look at something, check them, tell them they're not making things up, or preparing them for the next stage, or how do we take the pieces? That's another thing we do a lot of. How do we take the pieces of what you started creating and actually formulate it for you so you have something strong, right? Because again, concrete, not quicksand. I will tell this until I'm blue in the face, right? Like, how do we build that strong foundation? And because everything else you can change your social media strategy, right? Can you change your brand? That's a lot harder.
Right, yeah. It's a big build out. And people are so invested in telling their story and having that be a part of their brand and and as they should be. We need to show up authentically in this space and make sure that people understand the reasons why we're doing things.
People will know when you are not authentic.
Oh, they 100%
Period.
will. Yeah.
People know when you're full of it. If you're coming in because you hope you're going to make money and get out, you're not going to. Good luck, buddy.
Right.
But you're not going to. People know when you're full of it and they're going to look the other way.
Exactly. What are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges that when you start working with a client?
Budget is usually the biggest one.
Yeah, that's the one for me, for sure.
I say that. Listen, money's always an object for folks, but cannabis is that much harder. If you're plant touching, all your money's going to 280E in the first place, right? So you already automatically have less to spend. So that's number one, right? Number two, you are already kind of cost conscious because your costs are different. Now, yes, marketing, a lot of the same principles are going to apply no matter what, but you also have to spend, for a lot of states, you have to hold on to your rent. You have to have the space before you can open.
Right.
How many hundreds of thousands are you dropping on rent before you can even open your doors?
Right.
That's not a thing anywhere else, right? So the costs are... People are much more cost conscious. Some of it is justifiable. Some of it is, there's only so much you can do, right? This is not a place where if you build it, they will come is not a thing in cannabis anymore. I would argue that it never has been.
Okay.
But there's definitely a rush of folks who are just like, well, I'm selling weed and you got 4 options here, so of course you're going to come to me.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be people who shop by convenience, right? Are you closer by a quarter mile or 500 feet closer? That's always going to exist, right? But that's not always... that's always going to exist, but that's not always that's not where we're headed, right? So what I'm starting to, budget is becoming that issue.
Yeah.
Where it's becoming a really wedge issue for folks. So how are we going to, so how do we get creative? And that's a lot of what we do too, is well, here's how we can make it more attainable for you. So at least get started in a way that's going to use your stuff correctly.
That loyalty program, I think, is going to be a huge key piece in factoring into that too,
And we took a long time to build that out, right? We didn't offer it. We were referring out to some really trusted partners for a long time for that. And then we realized that we need to know, one hand, I really want to be involved with what the other hand is doing.
Yeah.
And not only that, it's another touch point from a marketing perspective, right? How can we be folding in the content that we're creating? How do we make sure that everything is on the same page? How do we understand what's going on, right? So when we brought in loyalty, again, really a brand new service, we spent more than a year fine-tuning it internally.
Awesome.
We spent more than a year working out how do we get this, because we're not just, even now we're starting to evaluate things and we're asking 15 questions before we even get to stuff, because it's not just, are we sending twice a week emails? That's great. I mean, it's important. But also but why are we doing it? Why are we doing it? Who are we sending this to? What's actually working? What's worth your time? What's not worth your time? Because again, cannabis time is money. So we spent a long time really fine-tuning this and made a really distinct, we made a really clear distinction between analytics and making sure that things are being done the right way, and the execution part, because they both involve creative, they both involve analysis, but we need to see what's rolling out. So that's something that we are, it's actually the first time I'm talking about it on camera. This has been a very quiet, slow launch for us. But that's the way I want to do it, because I firmly believe that slow and steady wins the race, and I would rather do something perfect than not do it at all.
Yes.
And that's
where that kindred spirit comes in, my girl.
I'm not offering something if I can't do it perfectly. That's the standards that we hold. And we are very, very, very careful to make sure that it's done that way.
I love those type of ethics. So thank you for that very intentional integrity there.
That's my goal.
Yeah, right? So budget, yes. What I was thinking was more SEO and how do we get this fucking shadow ban product out there to people, and how do we overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so what you're referring to is sort of 2 different pathways, right?
Okay.
So when people talk about shadow banning, they are talking about reduced visibility on social media specifically. So while social media does and is continuing to have a much larger presence and impact on your search engine optimization, Google is not removing results that are related to cannabis, right? We have been seeing this issue on Instagram for a long time, TikTok, all these platforms, and then there's places like LinkedIn where people flock to because it is an easier platform to navigate, right? So all these social media platforms, they follow international standards and codes of conduct. So what that means is they don't care that Canada is federally legal, right? They're not looking at the executive order that was just issued in the last couple of months in the United States. They're looking at international policy, right? So one of the examples I like to give, while not social media, is Canada has been federally legal for many years, right? Google only very recently launched a pilot advertising program in AdWords. That took 6-7 years.
Wow.
So this is not going to be an overnight floodgates, right? Because they have to navigate their own issues because they're following international, and so Meta particularly is following international policy. So if it even smells like you might be conducting a transaction on the platform.
Yeah.
That's the essence of it, right? So no S words, no sales, you don't buy anything, just show what it is, and then AI is making it harder because when you're turning moderation over to algorithms, which is what many of these platforms are doing en masse, it's a lot. You can't really reason with a human, right? That's gone. It has been gone for a long time, but it's like a mega gone now, especially and particularly on YouTube, where there's really no mercy anymore. Bless you.
Yeah,
there's no mercy anymore. So when we talk about search engine optimization, that is a different. So we're talking about two kind of fundamentally different things here.
Sure. Thank you.
No, it's okay. Search engine optimization. When we're talking about that, it's about how are we improving the visibility of your brand on search engines. So that is, we say Google because Google is still the vast majority of traffic. About 90% of your organic traffic is going to come from Google.
Right.
10% is everything else, including that fraction of a percent that's coming from ChatGPT. Hate to say it, but it's all coming from there. But Google sets the standards because they are the giant. So it's about how our search engines search engines are reading just like people are. How are they understanding what your website's about? How are they making associations? And how are they making assumptions, right? And there's I'm not going to call it microalgorithms, that's incorrect, but there are ways to do this in ways to do this, right?
Sure.
So, for example, like Google Maps is a different algorithm than like Google's the SERPs, the search engine results pages, those blue links.
Right.
That's a different algorithm. AI overviews is emerging as a different algorithm, right? So now we're talking about how are we communicating and showing up in all these places, and that is something that changes. Sorry, everyone, it changes multiple times a year. Google had 3 algorithm changes in the first 3 months of 2026 alone. Yeah. So
as soon as you figure something out, it's a pivot, right?
Unfortunately, yes, but that's because Google is continually trying to make improvements to, well, what do people actually want? So a really relevant example is about a year and a half ago, I'm not going to put a time on it, but initially, if someone was just searching dispensary, search engines weren't really making the assumption that someone wants to go shop. We are seeing this skyrocket over the last 6 months. The term dispensary, just writing the word dispensary in search engines, we're seeing that making traffic skyrocket now because Google understands, when someone types in dispensary, it doesn't have to be dispensary near me, which is still one of the best terms. They want to go buy weed, right? Yeah. They figure that out, but that takes algorithm change. And you can see when that algorithm change kicked in because our local dispensary clients in particular went, shoop, they went up, right? And that's something, that good foundations are essential for that because this is something that there is a technical component to it, there's a content component to it, there's a site speed component to it. There's a couple different areas that all communicate with each other. So how are we making sure that all those parts are actually being read correctly and communicating correctly? And that's where we're kind of in a different plane, right? So I understandably and with respect, it is very easy for people in our industry to automatically assume conspiratorial almost, right? Because, look at the history of the last 100 years.
Right.
Of course we're going to think that Google hates me, right? A lot of it is a technical problem, especially if you're someone trying to do it yourself, right?
Yeah.
It could be literally a one button switch. It could be something so wrecked we have to start over.
Yeah.
We don't, and that's where people that's why our team comes in and says, well, here's what we're seeing, here's what we can fix. Let's see how we can do that right. So that's that's really the fundamental difference between the two, and it's going to come down to and that's where I'm going to go back to my point of I want to see more cannabis folks talking outside of the industry, right? I have so much respect for PR when they go to these major stations and to major publications, and they're having communications outside because we're talking to each other, right? And that's a good thing. But the people who need to the market that you're trying to tap into, they don't know about conversations with Kush, they know Instagram. Right. And they will maybe follow conversations with Kush on Instagram, right? And that's something that, and that's where the shift is, and that's where the really important understanding comes. So I blabbed enough. I'm gonna
No, I love it. I really want to dive into what it's been like as a female in this space, as a woman in this space, and some challenges, and how are you overcoming those things? And let's encourage our girls out there. If we can.
I'm building my own table, and I want you to join me.
Yes, okay. I don't need to be invited to yours,
I am very thankful that we have had some really phenomenal partners over the years. But I'm also keenly aware of how I exist among other men who are in my position. There are a lot of women in marketing. There's a lot of talent in marketing. And there's... I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. I know when I'm in a room and there's a man talking to a few operators or other people, marketing folks, and I know when I'm getting passed over because I'm a woman who has to work twice as hard for half the reward. Right. It's a very real bias. I do not let it get in my way. I don't want you to get it in your way either. I also don't want you to ignore it, right? Because it is extremely real. It is very real to be passed over. I know that even if I'm offering better service, better pricing, I know when I'm being passed over. And it's because I'm not going to the club with you. You're not inviting me to the club. I'm not railing coke with you, right? Like, I'm not doing that. And it's just like, I don't look like someone you're going to invite to the strip club, right? And that's, again, I'm not knocking strip clubs. I'm knocking the bro culture that comes with it. So, and I don't let that stop me. I don't let that stop me. I have it for 9 years, and I won't for the next 9. Yeah. But I also recognize that it is incredibly real bias, and it's something that I've existed with my entire life, and I'm not going to get into comments about appearance that I get that I know no man would get in these conversations, right? Or assumptions, or I know when people are talking to me just because they think I'm hot, or the woman I'm standing next to me is hot. I see that all the time too, right? Like, I see it, and it's something that it's a very real thing to go up against, but it doesn't mean I don't want any woman, any femme person, let me say that, any femme person. I don't want any femme person, non-binary folks, anyone who isn't like a cis het male, basically. I don't want your worth to feel defined by the fact that you see the eyes gloss over when you start talking because it's not of interest anymore. Yeah. And, I hear from a lot of women in this space who try to go to conventions, not just in general, just go to events, and they end up getting hit on, right? They go end up to the parties and they feel really uncomfortable. And it's like, that's not fair. Yeah. That's not fair. And it's just like, there's only so much of it that we can say, we need to burn the culture down, right? You know what I mean? There's only so much we can say, and there's only so much that we can blame on there's always so much that we can blame on this is how it is, right? That's not what we want to be doing. It's about being aware of this is happening, knowing who you can trust, and come on and work together. Two things I want to offer. Thank you for that beautiful perspective. I appreciate it so much, and these are things that need to be said out loud to the masses. Yeah, I have no filter. Sorry. That's okay. No, I'm not sorry. What am I saying? Yeah, right? Yeah. Two things I want to offer is, like, let's just start working with each other and, like, take over the world, because this is our female plant, and, like, we need to own that part of it. Yeah. Secondly, gentlemen, recognize that you have held a certain space in this place, and invite people in, because let me tell you, your newest emerging demographic coming into here is middle-aged women and young people that are wanting to access cannabis versus, alcohol, or older folks too. There's plenty of women in those spaces that need to be, access cannabis, and, like, you can touch that part. So, like, instead of when you're in a circle, standing in a circle of a cannabis happy hour, instead of bromancing each other and there's a woman standing there who hasn't really said anything, turn to her and ask her, what do you think about this? Yep. You know what I mean? Like, just make a lane. Allyship is a start, for sure. And something that I want to make really clear to folks is a knee-jerk reaction that you see with some folks who think that this isn't really effective in the space. A knee-jerk reaction that you see a lot is, well, I don't want you to hire that person just because they're a woman, right? As if that's the whole, like, reverse racism nonsense. That's the whole DEI nonsense that we see. It's simply about looking around the room and seeing who's missing.
Right.
And it's not just women. It's, are we making sure our other races represented, or other genders represented? Because I can tell you, we have a truly diverse staff, and the perspective that everybody brings to the table is eye-opening, right? We have a lot of queer staff. My co-owners are both queer and very active in the queer community, and they are really cognizant of when folks, for example, throw up a rainbow on June 1st and take it down on June 30th.
Right.
And that's something that we can take that perspective and actively advise clients. I understand that you're trying to signal allyship, but this is how you should take it a step further. It's not a judgmental place. It's listen to gay people telling you what that's about.
Inclusive. It's an inclusive space.
Exactly, and that's what that means. So there's institutional issues on top of that. We know women and minorities historically do not have the same access to opportunity and funding. And that's something, and I don't want anyone to be like, poor me, oh, this is how it is. It's, well, how do I work with it here?
Right.
What do I do? And that's why I'm investing and have invested a lot of my energy into opening up doors as best as I can. Does that mean, it started with myself, switching my vendors to women-owned, right? It started with myself. And then it moved on to, what are issues in the industry? And I am, involved with multiple issues in the industry where we are deliberately connecting femme and women-owned businesses and decision makers with the investors, with the funders who can actually make a difference and make a tangible difference for them, right? Because it's about, you got to put food on the table at the end of the day. You're working, and the consequences are very real when women are left out of the conversation. 100%. And that's something that I have just become. I've been on my own for 11 years. And one of the reasons that I left the corporate world to start on my own was because of the misogyny I faced in the workplace. Jokes about me sleeping with my male staff, being paid less than the people I was hiring, generally just, I'll never forget when someone told me that he likes Rubenesque women. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, well, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it for me, right?
Yeah.
So I'm done. I'm very done. And everyone I talk to has this story. So is this I want this to be a position of empowerment and just acknowledging, right? And I hear, women who hire men, in cannabis and they get hit on, right? This happens all the time. Just be cognizant it's happening and say something when it's happening. You don't have to,
call it in.
Exactly. I like the way you put that.
Yeah.
Because your initial reaction might be to give them the finger. You don't have to do that. You can just say, stop that.
Yeah.
Right? You can just say,
that
hey, you might
feel
not
good,
notice.
and there's no place for that here.
Exactly. And that's not offensive to anybody, right? And that's something where, I've been really more comfortable calling that out when I'm talking to people over the years. And there's always a time and a place for everything, but I make it a point to do that. And that, I'm able to go to sleep peacefully and soundly, and I feel good about it at the end of the day.
Yes, I love it. All right, last but not least, tell my audience where they can access these beautiful services that you offer.
All right, CannaContent.co is our website. I am spending way too much time on LinkedIn, so Stella Morrison, if you search for me, you'll find me. It says women-owned everything in my bio. You can't miss me. My hair's a lot straighter in the picture, but you can't miss me.
Yeah.
And our Instagram, we're Canna_content, and I like have fun and stories over there. We have some really cool, really, really beautiful showcasing of our capabilities and designs on there as well.
Love it.
I would love to, our work we're really proud to have award-winning work under our belt. We're proud to be recognized inside and outside the cannabis industry for our work quality and for the success of our work. And I'm want to make it happen for other people, especially, particularly women in cannabis, but everybody's, I'm an equal opportunity helper for the right people for sure. So that's where I'm at. And, I hope, definitely was a little candid, but
I love
nothing
it.
to hide.
No, this is what, we need to open up these conversations and have these conversations because they can't stay in the dark. They need to come to the light and they need to be dealt with. Yep. So I just want to thank you so much for your time today.
Molly, my pleasure.
You are such a dynamo. Like, I have so much admiration for
Are you
like
gonna make
the
me
work
cry
that
on camera?
I hope so. Just a little bit. I brought tissue.
Oh, God. Oh, she came prepared. There's a box of tissues at my feet. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I just want to tell you how much I admire your spirit, your acumen, the work that you do, the very intentional, like you're aligning with people that have the same ethos as you. And like these are the things that we need in the industry that will make us flourish as people, as brands, as businesses, and as women in business, period. So
you made my good day great. I'm really appreciative for the platform. Thank you for being here and for calling attention to all the people, especially in Minnesota and everywhere, who are making things great. And I can't wait to watch the other millions of interviews you got going on today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, Stella.
Of course. Have a good one.
Checking in day one from NECANN. Stay tuned for all this great content. Peace.